It's lore time, gamers. It's lore time. First, I want to watch the new videos from Miss Chalice. We talked about Miss Chalice. She just started her YouTube channel. I found her on TikTok. She rules. Go subscribe if you care about lore. Elden Ring lore in particular, obviously. All right, this video is on Malekith and Gronkowski, everybody. Everybody go subscribe. Or just click on a couple of videos, give them some views. Not like I have 40,000 people watching right now, but still. Yeah, subtitles? All right, cool.
So this video is going to have a lot of endgame spoilers, so you have been warned. Please just leave a like and come back later when you finish the game. Now, where to start with Malekith? So he is a shadow-bound beast sworn to protect Marika. At first I believed this meant they had a relationship similar to Ranni and Blythe, a loyal protector. However, upon reading Malekith's helm, they are actually related. Malekith, Queen Marika's loyal half-brother, bore a blade imbued with destined death, and there was not one demigod who did not fear him. Either their mother or father was part beast, but that's as far back as we know about their family tree. It also might be meant figuratively, as in they were like brother and sister. Regardless, this was a rather one-sided relationship. Marika believed
it's a weird
Malekith
stepbro
served her only
situation.
for one sole purpose, to be used as a vessel to lock away destined death. So what exactly is destined death? According to Enya, the Round Table hold, the rune of death goes by two names. The other is destined death. So we know that this is just another word for the great rune of death. Destined death as a concept ensures that nobody is able to die, apart from those who possess this rune in their power. This conveniently explains why the Tarnished is able to respawn. It's because Marika isn't allowing us to die properly. As you follow the story, Melina will tell you,
this world is in dire need of repair, and death indiscriminate.
I don't know if she ever told me that. I don't know if Melina at this point hated me or not. I felt very jaded by my relationship with Melina. Very sad that it went sour. You know what I mean?
Indiscriminate.
Melina's objective is to restore mortality back into the world. She just wants everyone to be able to live and die as normal, instead of being under control of the Golden Order. Now knowing this, we know that destined death is quite a powerful ability to have, so it explains why Marika sealed this away with Malekith, so no one will be able to die without her willing so. Until one fateful night, when Ranni stole a piece of the rune of death from
our girlfriend Ranni
in order to kill Godwyn. Now I'm going to do a whole video on Ranni, so I won't exactly go into what her motives were now, but as a result, Marika was incredibly angry with this, and caused the event you will be familiar with.
Dude, fuck yeah. She's making a video on Ranni. That's awesome. Let's get that shit out. Hey, Chalice, get this shit out, all right? Work double time. Overtime.
On a bitter night, murdered Godwyn.
Everybody go subscribe to her so that she can, like, quit her job and just make lore.
Golden. That was the first recorded death of a demigod in all history. And it became the catalyst. Soon the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering.
And on a bitter night, murdered God with gold. That was the first recorded death of a demigod in all history.
So this is why during the boss fight with Malekith, we hear him say,
Death, I will not have it stolen from me.
he won't fail his duty that was bestowed to him by the Queen. Now, if you're still following, things are about to get even crazier, so bear with me. We fight Malekith in an area called the Crumbling Farum Azula. And this is an absolutely insane environment. You have floating ruins, tornadoes, beastmen, not to mention dragons everywhere. Now in this area you can fight a dragon by the name of Placidius. He is the Dragon Lord who once dwelled eternal beyond time. So with this information, we know that Farum Azula exists outside of the time that governs the lands between. It exists in this strange pocket dimension. Now, this is one of the more outlandish story elements to Elden Ring, and I don't think it's necessarily very clear what's going on here. So I'm going to try my best to back up everything I'm going to say with sources to try and strengthen my theory.
You better not fuck this up.
So let's backtrack a bit. At the beginning of the boss fight, in Phase 1, Malekith is referred to as the
20 minutes from Missouri.
We don't find his name out until Phase 2, when he draws upon the power of the Rune of Death to coat his blade. That's why he says,
Oh, death. Become my blade once more.
That's so sick.
Now, the reason why the term beast clergyman is significant is because back in the real world, you may be familiar with another beast clergyman by the name of Gurak. Dee tells us where we can find Gurak in the bestial sanctum, and his quest involves being fed something called Deathroot. Now, the theory is that Gurak, in the present day, is actually Malekith, who's in this pocket dimension. Now, I've collected a fair amount of evidence to support why I think this, so please stay until the end and let me know if you agree. First of all, Deathroot itself is a byproduct of the Rune of Death spread across the lands between.
It's gotta be him. There's no way that it's not him. I just always assumed it was the same dude.
Present day is actually Malekith, who's in this pocket dimension. Now, I've collected a fair amount of evidence to support why I think this, so please stay until the end and let me know if you agree. First of all, Deathroot itself is a byproduct of the Rune of Death spread across the lands between through the underground roots of the great tree, the Erd tree, sprouting in the form of Deathroot. Who would want to eat such a thing? It doesn't sound very appetizing. Apart from maybe the former possessor of the Rune of Death, as some kind of sad reminder of what used to be. So part of Gurak's quest is to collect and give him 9 Deathroots, and as you feed him more and more, his appetite for the Deathroot seems insatiable.
This is where he pops off at you. This was like when I was playing the game before it came out, this was the biggest jump scare I'd ever had in my life, probably. I just wasn't expecting this dude to attack me out of nowhere, and it scared the shit out of me. And then he kind of just goes calm again, and I don't really know why. I don't know what causes that.
And he demands that you bring him more. Around the 4th Deathroot, he will actually become hostile towards you and start attacking you unless you bring his HP down. This could possibly be a side effect of consuming Deathroot, which hints this might not be just the need to consume it, but more like an instructed punishment. It doesn't sound like a nice experience. Gurak says,
I won't forget. Again. Mine appetite.
My precious.
This could be a way of Marika trying to teach Gurak a lesson. If Gurak is Malekith, this could be
Greg is Malik.
Marika trying to teach a lesson for letting him part with the Rune of Death. And as a result, he now has to eat these plants which have sprout from her deceased child and suffer the consequences. Another theory reasoning, he will teach you an incantation called Gurak's Beast Claw. And if you read the description for this, it says, long ago, Gurak was a beast of such terrifying ferocity that his former name meant death of the demigods.
Whoa.
And who do we know who was feared by the demigods? Malekith. The 9th and last Deathroot that you give to Gurak, he screams out,
America! Is this what it is to sin? Will things never be the same again?
Wait a second. Did anybody ever have him appear outside of this bestial? Because like for me at one point, he ends up spawning outside when I went back to go see him. He was like, he was outside. I've heard he leaves when it rains. Really? What the fuck? That's so weird. I thought maybe just because by this point I'd already beaten the game. I'd already killed Malekith, and of course he's still here even if you kill Malekith and you beat the game. But he ended up spawning for me outside, and I thought that was some conditional thing where maybe since I beat the game now he's outside. Wow, that's so weird, dude.
Tarnished. My thanks for thy long labor, but I have done all I can in this land. Henceforth, mine appetite shall be my sole companion.
I can relate, bro. I can relate.
the final howl, his body fades away.
Oh shit.
Once you've given Gurak all 9 of the Deathroots and then you go and fight Malekith, you will actually unlock a different dialogue option. Instead of saying, "Thou who approacheth destined death, I will not have it stolen from me again," he appears to recognize us. He says,
Oh shit.
Why wouldst thou? Why?
that he recognizes us as the Tarnished and questions why we have done this. In the land of Farum Azula, it doesn't really explain the exact connection it has to the real world, whether it's in the past, the future, or some other parallel universe. It seems to have some interaction to an extent, as how would Malekith know who we are, as it's our first time meeting him? In addition, Malekith still exists in this universe, despite Durek disappearing or allegedly dying after we've given him the 9th death root. I personally believe Farum Azula exists somewhere in the past. Gurek, who we had seen before, is actually the future version of Malekith, forced to repent for his actions. Now, the final line of Malekith's remembrance refers to Marika and says, "Even then, she betrayed him." And it's not quite exactly stated what this betrayal is referring to. If you preemptively go and kill Gurek without giving him any death root, he will say, now the Dragon Lord...
Oh shit. See, I killed him before I think I gave him the 9th death root. Because I'd already beaten the game by this point. I was like, I just wanted to see what would happen, really. I killed him when he was outside.
Malekith's remembrance refers to Marika and says, "Even then, she betrayed him." And it's many deaths.
Why wouldst thou gull
means
me?
To take advantage of, to cheat, to betray. And with his last words, "Why shatter?" it might explain what this betrayal is referring to. The betrayal is when Marika caused the shattering. However, it gets even sadder. If you give Gurek all 9 death root and then defeat Malekith, you will get a different dialogue option as well. He will say,
Whoa.
Cannot be restored.
even after everything that's happened to Malekith, he still apologizes in his final words. He asks for forgiveness for not being able to right Marika's wrongs. Now, if you're still not convinced that Gurek is actually Malekith, there are a couple of other reasons why. The Bestial Sanctum, where we first meet Gurek, we find there's a large gargoyle outside guarding. If you read the description for the weapon that the gargoyle drops, it says, "This weapon was mended with blackened corpse wax. Such is the mark of those who serve Malekith, the Black Blade." It makes sense that a creature sworn to Malekith would be in charge of trying to protect him and trying to stop us from prematurely killing him, but letting him suffer in his quest to eat all the death root. It seems like too much of a coincidence for this type of creature to be outside where Gurek is. Now, one final finding of mine, which might lead to a deeper meaning to one of the endings of the game. Gurek awards you with a beast eye, a claw-marked stone eye. It's said to tremble when near death root. Now look closely at what this eye looks like. Does it seem similar to anything you might have seen?
A butthole
In
rune.
the Frenzied Flame ending, we see Melena's left eye, what it looks like underneath. Some people have theorized this might be what Rani's eye looks like. However, I think it could also be the beast eye. So tell me what you think. I've edited the beast eye over what it looks like in the socket and I've adjusted the lighting. The claw marking kind of matches Melena's mark on her eye as well. We know that Melena is linked to the whole destined death, having it been her whole agenda throughout the game.
Oh, I need to watch all the endings
so what
too.
this ending means is still pretty open in terms of interpretation. Malekith is definitely one of my favourite characters. In terms of alignment, he definitely seems to be a good character who really hasn't done anything wrong. He's just been a pawn of Marika. As always, please give me any suggestions for any characters, environments, any story elements you'd like me to cover in Elden Ring. I'm having so much fun doing this, guys. Honestly, thank you so much for 4,000 subscribers. It means the world. Bye.
You're almost at 6K, Chalice. Wow.
Some people have theorized this might be what Rani's eye looks like. However, I think it could also be the beast eye.
That's wild.
That is directly mentioned only once, yet seems to refer to a character that is a key part of much of the context and storytelling of Elden Ring. This character helps to explain the Godskins, Malekith, Destined Death, the Black Flame, the Elden Ring itself, whatever these things are doing, and maybe even some of the more mysterious aspects of other familiar faces. Warning, major spoilers ahead, including one of the endings of the game.
Big
So
ass
continue
spoilers.
at your own risk. Let's examine the one time where the name the Dusk-Eyed Queen is even mentioned. The Godslayer's greatsword is found at the bottom of the Divine Tower in Caelid, in a chest behind the boss arena of a Godskin Apostle. Its description reads, "The Godslayer's greatsword, sacred sword of the Dusk-Eyed Queen who controlled the Godskin Apostles before her defeat at the hands of Malekith. The black flames wielded by the Apostles are channeled from this sword." So, what can we learn from this? Well, we can see that
That was a sword that me, Mike, and Kevin went after, and then we spent so long trying to get it for me, and then I got it. I was like, it's actually not that good. The other, the halberd, the golden halberd's a little bit better.
Guide Queen used this sword to channel the black flame, and also was referred to as the Godslayer. The description of scouring black flame, which is dropped by another Godskin Apostle in the Windmill Village, explains how these black flames once had the power to slay the gods. Both of these items refer to how Malekith once defeated the Dusk-Eyed Queen and sealed Destined Death, taking away the ability for the Godskins in the
Yo, what's this bitrate at? Like 100? What the hell?
black flame to kill the gods. In case you didn't know, Malekith, the Black Blade, is Queen Marika's loyal half-brother, and he sealed away Destined Death,
Hey,
which is
half-brother.
another name for the Rune of Death, so that the gods could no longer be killed. So we know that the Godskins once followed the Dusk-Eyed Queen and had the power to kill the gods with the Black Flame. Let's examine the Godskins a bit closer. They come in two variations.
And they're
Godskin
fuckers.
Apostles
And they're
the
absolute
Godskin
fuckers.
Nobles. Apostles can be found at the Divine Tower of Caelid, Dominula, the Windmill Village, and Farum-Azula, and nobles can be found at Volcano Manor, the Carrion Study Hall, and in Farum-Azula with the Apostle. Let's quickly cover why the Godskins would be in each of these areas.
Godskin.
The Apostle found at the Divine Tower of Caelid is most likely there to guard the Godslayer's greatsword, which would make sense given the significance of it. The other Apostle found at the Windmill Village seems to be using these women to perform a ritual.
Because you can tell. I mean, you can't really tell here with the image quality, but there's like a face there. Like, their hoods are like.
Seems to be
the
using
skin of
these women
gods.
to perform a
Yeah.
ritual where people are skinned for the purpose of creating new garments for the Godskins, which is supported by this NPC's dialogue and the fact that the clothes worn by the Godskins are visibly made from human flesh. Interestingly, these dancing enemies can drop human bone shards, which is normally only found on the drop tables of undead enemies, like the skeletons in the catacombs. For the nobles, the one found in the Volcano Manor is inside a temple, and the one by the Carrion Study Hall is right by the Divine Tower of Liurnia. There seems to be a pattern that the Godskins are often found.
And that's just such a small little detail, but that's another reason why these games are so well made and well thought out. Of like, these enemies drop this item for a specific reason. They're not just dropping loot to have loot, you know? Like, they have human bone shards on them because they are skinning these people alive,
shards,
you know?
which is normally only found on the drop tables of undead
that shit's
enemies,
cool.
like the skeletons in the catacombs. For the nobles, the one found in the Volcano Manor is inside a temple, and the one by the Carrion Study Hall is right by the Divine Tower of Liurnia. There seems to be a pattern that the Godskins are often found in holy locations. Could this give more context to god worship in the lands between? Or is this simply for thematic purposes and cool fight arenas? Lastly, the Godskin duo boss fight is in another temple, but this one is shortly before the Malekith boss fight. Malekith is the one sealing Destined Death, so it's plausible that these Godskins are here to hunt Malekith himself.
That's
One
cool.
of each Godskin type is also found in Spirit Caller Cave, but these are just phantoms, so their presence isn't that notable. Let's look at some other item descriptions to see what we can learn about the Dusk-Eyed Queen. The Godskin Swaddling Cloth describes how the Gloam-Eyed Queen cradles newborn Godskins in cloth made from flesh. This may be confusing at first, but considering the context and the fact that Gloam has the same meaning as dusk, the names Dusk-Eyed Queen and Gloam-Eyed
Gloam.
Queen almost certainly refer to the same character. The Black Flame Ritual incantation clarifies that the Gloam-Eyed Queen led the Godskins, also that she was an Empyrean chosen by the Fingers. The criteria of what makes an Empyrean is a bit foggy, but from my
This Empyrean shit had me really confused.
understanding, Empyreans seem to be individuals that are capable of achieving godhood because of their heritage, like Malenia and Michaela, or by a process of being chosen by the Two Fingers, like Ranni the Witch. Since
My
the Two
girlfriend.
Fingers are interpreters of the Greater Will, we can see that the Dusk-Eyed Queen was likely chosen by the Greater Will to lead the Godskins, wield the Black Flame, and bring about the death of the gods. Now, back to the subject of the Godskins. The Godskin Apostle set clarifies that destined death itself is the source of their power, and the Godskin Noble set explains the abnormal features of the
Yeah,
Godskins,
that's so
like their
gross
tails
looking.
and stretchy bodies, as an assimilation of inhuman physiology, similarly to how the Crucible blended together all forms of life prior to the age of the Air Tree. The Godskin Stitcher and Peeler give insights as to how the robes of the Godskins were made, and finally, one of my favorite item descriptions in this game, the Noble Presence incantation describes it as an ancient power and a trophy of the Noble's God Hunt. Not only can we see that the Godskins have managed to kill gods long before the game takes place, but we also see that this power was once known as the God's Wrath, which is a neat little nod to the Wrath of the Gods spell from Dark Souls. Now, that's pretty much all we can learn about the Dusk-Eyed Queen from in-game material. She was someone chosen by the Greater Will to guard the Rune of Death and lead the Godskins.
No, she's my
which
girlfriend.
Probably occurred in ancient
She's
times.
my wife, yeah.
She was able to wield the Black Flame and lend its power to the Godskins by channeling the power of destined death so that the gods may fall by their hand. However, Malekith, at the request of Queen Marika, defeated the Dusk-Eyed Queen and her Godskins so that destined death may be sealed, preventing the natural order of the death of the gods. Yet, the question remains, who was the Dusk-Eyed Queen, and does she appear in-game? The answer is... maybe?
Perfect. Great.
Nobody is directly referred to as the Dusk-Eyed Queen or the Gloam-Eyed Queen, but there are a few characters who may be related to her in some way. There are two characters in particular that I suspect could be related to the Dusk-Eyed Queen, the first of which being Ranni the Witch. Throughout the game, we learn that Ranni coordinated the Night of the Black Knives, leading to the theft of the Rune of Death and the death of the demigods. During
There's
this,
nothing cooler
she
than
also
Night of the
used
Black
the Rune of
Knives.
Death to discard her body so that she may escape the system of Empyreans serving the Greater Will. Ranni is part of Queen Marika's somewhat convoluted family tree, and she was chosen by the Fingers to
The daughter of Renala and Radagon. And then Radagon was like, hey, Renala, peace out. I'm gonna go be with this other lady. Who's this lady? It's me. What are you talking about, Radagon? Who are you leaving me for? I'm leaving you for myself. Her name is Marika. Me. How's that possible, Radagon? I don't know, man. That's what fucking George R.R. Martin said, alright?
become an Empyrean before she decided to inhabit Adal and actively oppose the Greater Will. Compare this to what we know about the Dusk-Eyed Queen. They were both Empyreans chosen by the Fingers, both exhibited control over the Rune of Death, and both have connections to the concept of the Night. Additionally,
Bro just
on
wanted
Ranni's
out of the
corpse,
relationship.
we can see jewelry that resembles the gems worn by the Godskin Apostles, suggesting some sort of connection.
I don't want to see Ranni's
So,
corpse. That
could
doesn't
Ranni
exist
be
in,
related to the Dusk-Eyed
in my
Queen?
mind.
While it is possible, there's also evidence that opposes their relationship. Firstly, Ranni seems to want nothing to do with the Greater Will, while the Dusk-Eyed Queen accepted her role as the death of the gods. Also, if Malekith was able to defeat the Dusk-Eyed Queen and seal the Rune of Death, then why would Ranni still be alive after this event? And why would she employ the Black Knives rather than the Godskins to slay the gods? And while the term Dusk-Eyed certainly draws attention to whatever Ranni has going on here with her eye, there seems to be a distinction
judge her.
between dusk, which usually corresponds
Don't
to
judge her
death
appearance.
and literal darkness, and the night, which corresponds to the moon, frost, and sorceries. With this in mind, could Ranni be related to the Dusk-Eyed Queen? It could be possible. Could Ranni herself be the Dusk-Eyed Queen? Probably not.
Whoa, that mimic helmet
The
looks so
second of
sick.
our
I didn't
two
realize it looked
suspects
like that
is
in real life.
Melina, the spectral woman who plays the role of Maiden for the player character throughout
Melina.
the game and helps to convert the runes they collect into strength. We learned that Melina is left burned and bodiless, and she was given a task
I am Melina.
by her mother at the base of the air tree. Later, we find out that this task was to envision the flame and burn the air tree. So, why is Melina a suspect? Well, on top of the fact that her mysterious origins
Melina's
are
a Mortal
perfect for
Kombat
explaining
fighter.
the mysterious absence of another prominent figure, she exhibits deep knowledge on America's history with her voice lines at certain graces, suggesting that she could have been an Empyrean or related to one. When you burn the air tree, Melina also talks about how the one who walks alongside flame shall one day meet the road of destined death. So, this character has connections to the gods, a dark pattern on her eye, a mysterious past and refers to her mother of similarly mysterious nature, lost her
Seems
body to
pretty
unknown
good.
causes long ago, and seemingly has a connection to destined death. However, the most interesting piece of evidence is found in one of the endings. If you choose to
This is
accept
not
the power
Body,
of
no,
the
we're watching
frenzied
Body's
flame,
video next.
you can burn the air tree without sacrificing Melina. After your character becomes the Lord of Frenzied Flame and begins to incinerate all life in the lands between, Melina returns, and the following cutscene plays.
I haven't seen this yet. The Precious.
Lord of Frenzied Flame. I will seek you as far as you may travel.
Woo!
To deliver you what is yours. Destined death.
Ho ho ho!
So what do you think? Could Ranni or Melina be the Dusk-Eyed Queen? Could she
So, when I first chose the path of the Lord of the Frenzied Flame, Melina was like the whole time like, hey bro, don't do this, dog. Hey, do you know what this means for us? And I was like, you need to chill the fuck out. You don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know where I come from. And then she was like, until the end of days, I'm gonna hunt your ass down until I kill you. That's just what it is. It is what it is. And I was like, shit, all right, well, you know, bring it on, is what I told her. And then I obviously reverted the Frenzied Flame, so I never got that. But I expected that when I chose that path, eventually Melina would have been some sort of boss fight. That's just what I thought was going to happen. But somewhere along the way, I guess, when I burned the Erd Tree, she was like, ah, shit's fucked up, you know? I don't know. But we'll talk about that later. Yeah, I know that she joins you to help fight Morgott, and I thought that was so interesting.
So what do you think? Could Ranni or Melina be the Dusk-Eyed Queen? Could she be Melina's mother? Or is Melina simply just another offspring of Marika? Could the similarities between Ranni and Melina, such as their eyes, spectral nature, and connection to Torrent, suggest a connection both between each other and to the Dusk-Eyed Queen? Let me know what you think in the comments.
I think
along
we,
with any
I think we need to talk to Torrent. I think we need to figure out a way. I think Torrent holds all the answers. We're clearly not talking to the right suspect. Hey, we got a Pope turtle that can talk. Magical horse, magical steed, I need you to talk to us as well. Talk to us. Let's hear it. If you can't talk, you know what? If you can't talk, I'll do the thing that they do in Breaking Bad with Hector Salamanca, where they have like the letter thing and they're like spelling out the words, and he like it rings the bell whenever they get to the right. Remember when he spelled out "suck my dick"? He was gonna spell out "suck my dick" to Hank Schrader. We could do that. You know. Ding! And he's the. You know Hector Salamanca.
Our story doesn't begin in the lands between. It begins in the cosmos, far away, with an outer god called the Greater Will. There are a lot of outer gods mentioned in Elden Ring. You can think of these kind of like the Great Ones of Bloodborne. They're distant beings, they're all-powerful, and they're quite unknowable by design. But many of these outer gods want to make their presence felt in the world. The Greater Will, maybe most of all. To this end, it sent a golden star hurtling towards the lands between. The Elden Star's incantation tells us that this golden star was bearing a beast, an Elden beast. The Elden Remembrance calls it a vassal beast of the Greater Will. If you didn't know, a vassal is someone who holds land on behalf of their overlord. Obviously, this is fitting in this case, because the Elden Beast occupied the lands between on behalf of the Greater Will, and was a living incarnation of the concept of order. As such, this beast would...
The weirdest, by the way, just let me just interrupt it immediately. The weirdest beast monster to ever need to wield the sword. Like, you look... honey, you're enough. You don't need no sword. You are enough. Like, look at you, you're jelly, you've got galaxies in your body, you've got all these fucking veins, you're so throbbing. You're enough, honey. All right? You don't need no weapon.
Living incarnation of the concept of order. This is fitting in this case, because the Elden Beast occupied the lands between on behalf of the Greater Will, and was a living incarnation of the concept of order. As such, this beast would later become the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring itself is made up of runes of power, some great, some small, that
some
together
average,
represent a sort of logic for the world to follow. Thus, the Elden Ring represents order. The true nature of this order is a subject of constant debate and research undergone by fundamentalists. But two of the key fundamentals are the laws of causality and regression. You can think of the law of causality as cause and effect, where actions have consequences, and those consequences are new causes that branch out into infinity. These are the relationships between things. Then there's the law of regression that states that all things eternally yearn to converge and return to their roots. Fittingly, then, the Elden Ring is housed within the Erd Tree, which towers over the lands between. But it's very important to stress that life in the lands between did not begin with the Erd Tree, the Elden Ring, or the Elden Beast. No, the lands between were occupied well before the Greater Will came. There were other beings here. There were other factions here. There were other gods here. And there was even another great tree here before the Erd Tree. And this is where a huge twist regarding the Erd Tree comes in. So there are incantations in the game called aspects of the Crucible.
I hate that one. It's so gross. It's just a big bulbous fucking thing.
The descriptions, these are manifestations of the Erd Tree's primal vital energies. And I quote, "They are an aspect of the primordial crucible where all life was once blended together." But how could all life be blended together in the Erd Tree if the Erd Tree appeared after life existed? Well, there can only be one answer, right?
Wait, hold on. How'd you do this?
But how could...
You got a little debug menu or what? Devati, who helped you make this? You get like some debug photo mode? You're doing this in real time. There's a mod? Okay, I figured. I was wondering. Yeah, it's the photo mode they didn't release.
Tree's primal vital energies. And I quote, They are an aspect of
I did
the
fight
primordial crucible where
Plaxicoburus.
all life was once blended together. But how could all life be blended together in the Erd Tree if the Erd Tree appeared after life existed? Well, there can only be one answer, right? That the Erd Tree is a parasite, and it took over a tree that existed here before. This ancient tree was called the Great Tree. So the Great Tree was almost certainly the location of this primordial crucible, and it must have been a very powerful primordial force for the Greater Will to have commandeered. It might even be the reason the Lands Between is important to the Greater Will in the first place. It also explains why spells and enemies related to the Great Tree's crucible would eventually be looked down upon.
Oh, wow.
For example, the Knot Talisman is fashioned from a knotted vestige of the Crucible, and it was considered a signifier of the divine in ancient times, but is now increasingly disdained as an impurity as civilization has advanced. Enemies related to the Crucible are the Omen, the Misbegotten, and the Crucible Knights, and all three of them would be shunned,
Fuck you.
enslaved, or imprisoned.
Fuck you.
Those who speak for the Erd Tree don't want you to know its roots, so to speak. According to the spell, Protection of the Erd Tree, in the beginning everything was in opposition to the Erd Tree, but through countless victories in war, it became the embodiment of order.
In Marika's own words, the Erd Tree governs all. The choice is thine. Become one with the order, or divest thyself of it. To wallow at the fringes,
I really wanted these dudes to do something cool. Like the fact that these dudes just kind of walk in a circle. I was hoping that I thought I was going to witness them all walk into the ocean and something was going to happen. But they just wander around. And it makes sense now, story-wise. But because of this, not Game of the Year. Sorry. Hate to be the arbiter of truth here, everybody.
the Erd Tree governs all. The choice is thine. Become one with the order,
Take
or
that back.
divest thyself of it. To wallow at the fringes, a powerless upstart.
But the Greater Will needed more than a big tree. It needed loyal agents in the lands between. To this end, it has the Two Fingers, who are its envoys. The Two Fingers
Gotta
heirloom
moisturize,
has a
you
weird
know?
picture of them, but it reads, "Of course, fingers cannot speak, yet these are eloquent. Persistently they wriggle, spelling out mysteries in the air. Thus did we gain the words of our faith." These words are interpreted by the finger readers. These are the undying old crones that you would have found throughout the lands between. They pass down the wisdom of the Two Fingers, or at least they used to.
Your fingers, please, your fingers. I can read them.
Most of them appear to have lost their purpose, and they're desperate to read your fingers and tell you annoying riddles, since their two fingers are likely dead. And yes, of course, there are multiple sets of Two Fingers. You would
Yeah,
have
what's this
found
about?
their corpses on the tops of the divine towers. Atop these towers, you loot the fingers in order to activate the true power of a great rune. Specifically, though, you are giving benediction back to your great rune. You're taking a blessing back from the two dead fingers, essentially. This is just one of many blessings that the Two Fingers can bestow, and my point is kind of that the Two Fingers clearly have more than just influence. They have real power on some level. The Greater Will needs these powerful envoys and agents because, while it's obviously incredibly powerful, it does seem limited by a few things. First is space. The Greater Will didn't come to the lands between itself, it sent an Elden beast to do its bidding instead. Second is time. There is a moment later in the game where
Jorbite, no joke. I was just thinking that, like, what if the finger reader crones were basically just like doing astrology, that were like, you know, doing tarot cards, just lying to people, acting like they know. Today, you will use the restroom. I'd be like, whoa, how'd you fucking know? Who told you? It'd be a great career to get into. today you will eat a few snacks. Holy shit.
Most of them appear to have lost their purpose, and they're desperate to read your fingers and tell you annoying riddles, since their two fingers are likely dead. And yes, of course, there are multiple sets of two fingers. You would have found their corpses on the tops of the divine towers. Atop these towers, you loot the fingers in order to activate the true power of a great rune. Specifically though, you are giving benediction back to your great rune. You're taking a blessing back from the two dead fingers, essentially.
Yo, why did Vadi go so hard on the B-roll, though?
The two fingers can bestow, and my point is kind of that the two fingers clearly have more than just influence. They have real power on some level. The Greater Will needs these powerful envoys and agents because, while it's obviously incredibly powerful, it does seem limited by a few things. First is space. The Greater Will didn't come to the lands between itself, it sent an Elden beast to do its bidding instead. Second is time. There is a moment later in the game where your pair of two fingers go still, because they're forced to commune with the Greater Will for guidance.
Oh, wow.
When they are finished, the fingers will again offer their guidance. But thousands, if not tens of thousands, of moons must first pass. No matter for me. But you, how will you ever manage to wait?
So the Greater Will needs a physical manifestation of order. It needs envoys to convey its will, but what it also needs is a god. Introducing Marika the Eternal. I have this utterly enormous mind map of Elden Ring's lore. And
what the
there's a reason she's at the center.
What the fuck? Holy... Yo, we gotta... Yo, Vadi. Hey. Vadi, we gotta figure out, like, who, you know, the whole JFK thing. We gotta figure out lots of different conspiracies in the world. He did tweet this, but he tweeted it in a way that when you first start Elden Ring, you're like, wow, this is a big map. And then the motherfucker starts zooming out.
Mind map of Elden Ring's lore, and
you're like, oh, this is a real big map. You know? Hey, Vadi, what happened with Kojima and Konami? Let's figure that out. What's going on with Bloodborne? 60 frames per second. What's going on with that? Who can you talk to? What do you know? No? What's Blue Point working on? What's Blue Point working on? Things to investigate. That's the top left corner. You see Blue Point.
There's a reason she's at the center. She's essentially the equivalent of Gwyn from Dark Souls, except unlike Gwyn, Marika didn't just crawl out of the dark and find power. To an extent, it seems like she earned it. We don't know much about her origins, except that she is of the Numen race, which is actually an origin that you can choose in the character selection screen. Numen come from outside the lands between, and
fucking Lord of the Rings
descendants of denizens of another world, long-lived but seldom born. At some point, Marika was chosen as an Empyrean. What is an Empyrean? Well, an Empyrean is a being chosen by the fingers as a candidate for godhood. As an Empyrean, Marika received the aid of a shadow to do her bidding. So what is a shadow? Well, it's a wolf, shadowbound to its Empyrean by the two fingers. Lunar Princess Rani is another example of an Empyrean with a shadowbound beast.
Rest in peace,
you would have met Blythe. These creatures are the Empyrean's very own shadow. They are completely loyal to their needs and, by definition, incapable of treachery. Marika's shadow was a beast called Malekith. Every Empyrean uses their shadow in different ways, but Marika's sole need of her shadow was as a vessel to lock away destined death. So what is destined death? Well, according to Enya, it's the rune of death.
The rune of death, goes by two names. The other is Destined Death.
We mentioned earlier that the Elden Ring is made up of runes, and at some point, maybe when she was chosen as a god, Marika plucked the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring. She gave the Rune of Death to Malekith, her totally loyal shadow, who bore a black blade imbued with this rune. It's kind of genius, really. In a single act, she removed the concept of death from the lands between, while also commanding total control of death through her shadow, who could deliver it at her whim. Now, some of you might be asking, if death is removed...
I gotta rewind this. Cool Greg just texted me. Okay.
Bore a black blade imbued with this rune. It's kind of genius, really. In a single act...
Hey, what happened? Yeah, what happened to Latenna's Wolf? What happened to Latenna's Wolf Omega archetype? Oh, Gideon had her killed, motherfucker. So was it dead the whole time? I thought it was just asleep. I thought that dude was just asleep.
She removed the concept of death from the lands between, while also commanding total control of death through her shadow, who could deliver it at her whim. Now, some of you might be asking, if death is removed from the lands between, how come I can kill this dog? First off, shame on you. Second, from a lore point of view, that dog isn't really dead. It's simply in the process of its spirit, or its soul, returning to the Erd Tree. Catacomb dungeons, for example, are specifically constructed near the roots of the Great Tree for this reason, so that the Erd Tree can reabsorb their ashes back into it. This process replaced the concept of a death that you were destined to have, but this random spirit outside of a catacomb dungeon says it best. As another example of this theory, when you kill a major boss, you receive a remembrance of them. But this random spirit outside of a catacomb dungeon says it best.
Proper death means returning to the Erd Tree.
A proper death means returning to the Erd Tree. Have patience until the time comes and the roots call to you.
Put that on the fucking demo reel. Jesus Christ, get me in this industry. Come on.
As another example of this theory, when you kill a major boss, you receive a remembrance of them. These are spirits, and they are hewn into the Erd Tree. In this way, thanks to the Erd Tree's grace, their spirits are immortalized, in a sense. This new form of death also explains what's happening when you summon spirits.
From ash and return to the Erd Tree.
However, some spirits never return to the Erd Tree, and they rise within death as corpses or skeletons instead. So this was...
Stupid spirits. To refuse the Erd Tree's call to return, to seek, to live within death, sickening. What was the first thing it said?
So this was the...
Oh, is that all it said?
Dead.
Unthinkable, our hallowed resting place is violated. To refuse the Erd Tree's call to return, to live within death, sickening.
So this was the new order. And it's important to stress that it was in this moment, when the Rune of Death was removed, when Destined Death was taken, this is when Order became the Golden Order.
The forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation.
Specifically, this was Marika's Golden Order. So not only did she become a god and a vessel for the Elden Ring, she became renowned as Marika the Eternal for her removal of Destined Death. It was a huge part of her character and her reign as well. However, Marika had more than just death to conquer. She had wars to fight, as the world was occupied by many forces that could threaten her Golden Order. There was war with the Stormlord, who likely...
Plasudasax just got... His motherfucker's got teeth all over. The teeth... Where do they end and begin, you know? Also, I just want to shout out once again, Vadi just killing it with the goddamn B-roll.
Eternal for her removal of destined death. It was a huge part of her character and her
Yo, what up,
reign
Melissa?
as well. However, Marika had more than just death to conquer. She had wars to fight, as the world was occupied by many forces that could threaten her Golden Order. There was war with the Stormlord, who likely ruled over Stormvale, and there was a war with the Giants, who were masters of a flame that could burn the Erd Tree. There was war with the ancient dragons, who incidentally had stones that could twist
Kidney
time
stones.
and thus slay a god. And finally, there was war brewing with the Carrion royalty, who had previously obeyed laws which contravened the Golden Order. Thus, sort of similar to how the Greater Will needed an Empyrean to enforce its will, Marika herself needed someone to wage war. So, there was to be a husband, a consort, an Elden Lord. The man chosen was Horalu, a ferocious warrior who became known as the Lord of the Battlefield.
So sick.
His crown was warranted with strength, and while it was for this strength that Marika married him, he was also required to take a vow to conduct himself as a lord. To suppress the ceaseless lust for battle that raged within, Horalu took the beast regent Sarosh upon his back. You'll notice this is another example of a beast being given for the purpose of serving order. Thus, in this moment, he went from being Horalu, warrior.
I was always wondering what the hell Sarosh's deal was. Because this is the only, beast that doesn't really necessarily have a physical form. Even though I guess he does grab Sarosh and, fuck him up, but it's not... obviously, it's like a translucent sort of ghost. This isn't like Malekith or Blythe, you know?
Rush upon his back. You'll notice this is another example of a beast being given for the purpose of serving order. Thus, in this moment, he went from being Horalu, warrior, to Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, consort to Queen Marika, and a certified demigod. Godfrey and Marika had 3 demigod children together. There was Godwyn the Golden, who you saw being killed in the opening trailer, and there were also the reviled Omen twins, Morgoth, who guards the Erd Tree, and Moog, who became Lord of Blood. You might think that Godric was another demigod child, but he actually wasn't. Instead, he was probably descended from Godwyn. Anyway, we'll talk about the demigods more in detail in another video, so subscribe for that. But for now...
We'll talk about that later.
More in detail in another video, so subscribe for that. But for now, just know that Godfrey and his offspring were the first demigods, henceforth known as the Golden Lineage. In his wars, Godfrey led his 16 Crucible Knights into battle, who were named so for they fought with the primordial powers of the Erd Tree. Their incantations were aspects of the Crucible itself, and they likely fought giants, dragons, the Stormlord, and more to usher in their age, the age of the Erd Tree.
In Marika's
Those bosses were a little too easy, right, chat? First tried them, these fucking easy-ass bosses.
Their incantations were aspects. In his wars, Godfrey led his 16 Crucible Knights into battle, who were named so for they fought with the primordial powers of the Erd Tree. Their incantations were aspects of the Crucible itself, and they likely fought giants, dragons, the Stormlord, and more to usher in their age, the age of the Erd Tree.
In Marika's own words, "Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my Lord Godfrey. We commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount. Let a new epoch begin, an epoch glistening
Good
with light."
ass word, epoch. That's a good ass word.
Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my Lord Godfrey. We commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount. Let a new epoch begin, an epoch glistening with life. Brandish the Elden Ring for the age of the Erd Tree.
The Erd Tree would go on to be largely seen as a blessing for all of those in the lands between, especially those close to it in Leyndell, the capital city of the Erd Tree. The tree bestowed blessings. For example, the dew that dropped from its branches were like jewels. It loomed overhead as a constant reminder of order, and its roots reached far and wide, relieving many of the burden of death. In fact, Erd Tree burial was one of the highest honors a hero could receive. One by one, the previous factions of the world fell. Stormvale was conquered, and the Stormlord was defeated. The giants were put to the sword, and their fell god was killed by Marika herself. The ancient dragons broke down the walls of Leyndell, but met fierce retaliation. However, I think the House of the Erd Tree encountered the most trouble against the land to their southwest, Liurnia. Here, the House of the Moon repelled their offensives time and time again, and I mean that literally, because there was not just one but two wars fought here, and in both of these, there was no victory for the Golden nor for the Moon. And I suspect it was probably because of these lobsters. These damn things can snipe you from like a mile away.
Yeah, it's fucking sucks.
Bullshit. Actually, it was probably because of the Carrion Knights, who, according to their weapons, were able to wield sorcerous battle skills and...
Remember this class you never got to play as, chat? The Enchanted Knight? God damn, this B-roll is just killing it though, dude. Holy shit, I just can't right now with this B-roll. It's so good.
This retaliation. However, I think the House of the Erd Tree encountered the most trouble against the land to their southwest, Liurnia. Here, the House of the Moon repelled their offensives time and time again, and I mean that literally, because there was not just one but two wars fought here, and in both of these, there was no victory for the Golden nor for the Moon. And I suspect it was probably because of these lobsters. These damn things can snipe you from like a mile away, and it's bullshit. Actually, it was probably because of the Carrion Knights, who, according to their weapons, were able to wield sorcerous battle skills, and despite numbering fewer than 20, this power made them a match for even the champions of gold in battle.
That's cool.
These enchanted knights were anointed by the Lunar Queen, a young astrologer who went on to establish the House of Caria as royalty in this land. With her bewitching lunar magic, she won over the Academy of Raya Lucaria, where glintstone sorcery was studied, and united the Carian royal family and the learned scholars of Raya Lucaria defended their home from the golden aggressors. At the head of this great golden army was Radagon.
Lord Radagon was a great champion, possessed of flowing red locks. He came to these lands at the head of a great golden host. When he met Lady Renala in battle,
these two champions clashed, fell in love, and joined their houses.
Radagon once cleansed himself with...
It's just like Shang-Chi, remember? They're fighting and then they ended up fucking pretty soon. I don't know if you saw the extended edition on Disney Plus. It was really good stuff.
When he met Lady Renala in battle,
these two champions clashed, fell in love, and joined their houses.
Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala. The Order of the Erd Tree and the fate of the Moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven.
You might think it strange that the Greater Will would permit this union, but it's not too odd, all things considered. As with most From Software games, sorcery and faith are just two sides of the same coin, and both of these powers stem from the cosmos. Radagon and Renala were known to have 3 children together. Lunar Princess Rani, who inherited her mother's propensity for lunar magic, Radan, who took after his father Radagon and would go on to master gravitational magic, and Rykard, who pioneered new hex sorceries and would go on to feed himself to a great serpent.
So gross,
It follows that at some point after this, Marika began to harbor doubts about the Golden Order.
And how's our son Rykard? Oh, he fed himself to a snake. It's just what he wanted to do. I mean, I'm not gonna tell my kid what to do, you know? You tell your kid what to do, they start to rebel against you, you know?
The Great Serpent. It follows that at some point after this, Marika began to harbor doubts. Doubts about the Golden Order that she had had a hand in creating.
In Marika's own words, I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order through understanding of the proper way. Our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past. My comrades, why must ye falter?
And it's at this point that we should talk about Marika's motivations, her character. This is surely going to be one of those huge points of debate in the coming years, but for now, my working theory is that she wanted to discover the truth behind order and the truth behind the greater will, and she believed that bonds had to be broken so that they could be better understood. She believed that there was great meaning to be found in hardship.
Queen Marika has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle unto eternity.
For Lord Godfrey, his struggle ended at the end of his campaigns. According to his armor, he led the war against the giants, faced the Storm Lord alone, and then there came a moment when his last worthy enemy fell, and it was then, as the story is told, that the hue of Lord Godfrey's eyes faded. In truth, he was robbed of his grace. Then Marika sent him away.
My lord, and thy warriors, I divest each of thee of thy grace. With thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Ye will wage war in a land afar, where ye will live and die.
This became known as the Long March of the Tarnished, as Godfrey and his tarnished descendants walked away from the lands between. But Queen Marika absolutely had a plan here, that Lord Godfrey and his descendants would one day return stronger, having struggled outside of grace.
Then, after thy death, I will give back what I once claimed, return to the lands between, wage war, and brandish the Elden Ring, grow strong in the face of death. Warriors of my lord, Lord Godfrey.
Soon after, she found a new husband. Either that or a new husband was found for her.
When Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands between, Radagon left Rennala to return to the Erdtree capital, becoming Queen Marika's second husband and king consort, taking the title of Second Elden Lord. The mystery endures to this day as to why Lord Radagon would cast Lady Rennala aside, and moreover, why a mere champion would be chosen for the seat of Elden Lord.
Whatever the case, as a part of this union, Radagon's prior 3 children with Rennala became demigod stepchildren, granted grace thanks to their new family tree. Rennala was broken by this, and so was her country, Liurnia. The Queen's set reads, when Rennala, head of both the Academy of Raya Lucaria and the Carian royal family, lost her husband Radagon, her heart went along with him, and then those at the Academy realized that Rennala was no champion after all.
Damn.
In the wake of Radagon's betrayal and Rennala's poor judgment, Liurnia struggled with civil war, with the Academy of Raya Lucaria on one side and the Carian royals on the other. And it's here, during the age of the Erdtree, that Lunar Princess Rani, daughter of Rennala and Radagon, stole a fragment of the Rune of Death.
It happened during the golden age of the Erdtree, long before the shattering of the Elden Ring. Someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith, the Black Blade.
As mentioned previously, Malekith was Marika's shadow, and he had sealed destined death in a black blade. Then a fragment, only a fragment, of this Rune of Death was stolen. And once this happened, Malekith went a step further in protecting destined death. He bound the blade within his own flesh, such that none might rob death ever again.
So epic,
It was too
dude.
late, however. This fragment of the Rune of Death was used immediately, that night, to kill a demigod, Marika's own son, Godwyn the Golden.
That was the first recorded death of a demigod in all history, and it became the catalyst. Soon, the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering.
Now, there is a lot of really credible evidence that Marika was behind this plot to have a fragment of the Rune of Death stolen. There's also a ton of evidence that Marika is behind the entirety of your Tarnished quest, but we'll talk about that in another video. For now, all you really need to know in terms of the...
He said the thing! But we'll talk about that later. That's crazy. Marika killed JFK. He figured it out. BG 2580. 4 years of support. I don't even know where to begin. It's been a ride. Hashtag RIP Porty. RIP to the King, BG. Absolutely. Thanks for 4 years of support, my dude. Thank you to Drezier for 17 months. Skycry for 8 months of support. Nebula Soup for 15 months. Marika wanted to be broken free of the Golden Order. I need to rewind this one more time.
Elden Ring. Someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith, the Black Blade.
As mentioned previously, Malekith was Marika's shadow, and he had sealed destined death in a black blade. Then a fragment, only a fragment, of this Rune of Death was stolen. And once this happened, Malekith went a step further in protecting destined death. He bound the blade within his own flesh, such that none might rob death ever again. It was too late, however. This fragment of the Rune of Death was used immediately, that night, to kill a demigod, Marika's own son, Godwyn the Golden.
That was the first recorded death of a demigod in all history, and it became the catalyst. Soon, the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering.
Now, there is a lot of really credible evidence that Marika was behind this plot to have a fragment of the Rune of Death stolen. There's also a ton of evidence that Marika is behind the entirety of your Tarnished quest, but we'll talk about that in another video. For now, all you really need to know, in terms of the timeline at least, is this. After the marriage of Marika and Radagon, and after a fragment of the Rune of Death was stolen, Marika went on to shatter the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it, to no avail. The Elden Ring had been broken into runes, some great and some small. Now, you'd think this is when the world would fall apart.
It's kind of wild just even thinking about the first glimpses we got at Elden Ring and to see what the theories were. Like, I mean, I remember the video. I remember like Vadi's videos back then of like, there's this guy hammering this thing, trying to put something back together. And it's like, we didn't know shit. We didn't know a goddamn thing.
Marika went on to shatter the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it, to no avail. The Elden Ring had been broken into runes, some great and some small. Now, you'd think this is when the world would fall apart, like the Elden Ring, you know, and the Shattering War would ensue, but it kind of can't have happened like that. Instead, Order must have remained loosely held together for a time. In fact, I speculate that this is why the Divine Towers were built. They're arranged in a ring, and there's one Divine Tower for each great rune of the Elden Ring.
And what's in the middle, gamers?
Great rune of the Elden Ring.
What the fuck is in the middle, gamers? What is it? What's underneath the cloud? What are you hiding from us?
Arranged in a ring, and there's one Divine Tower for each great rune of the Elden Ring, so that even after the Shattering, some semblance of order could be maintained, and the Elden Ring could be kept together to an extent. But order wasn't the only thing that was getting forced back together at this stage.
You know, it's said that Lord Radagon harbored a secret. A famed sculptor of the Erdtree capital was once summoned to render Lord Radagon's likeness in giant stature, when he glimpsed the skeleton in Radagon's closet. And as such, it's said the great statue harbors his secret too.
Of course, the huge twist in Elden Ring is that Radagon is Marika. Or depending on what you believe, he became her, for she knew it was going to happen.
In Marika's own words, O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both. Mine other self.
You can tell when From Software is keeping something a little bit open-ended, and of everything in Elden Ring's lore, this will also go on to be one of the biggest unknowns as we move forward. For example, the wording, thou art yet to become me, reinforces that Marika and Radagon were two separate entities before the shattering. However, in contrast, there is also evidence that Radagon was always part of Marika. For example, Enya and Radagon were two separate entities before the shattering.
Really? Wow. So I didn't even consider that.
However, in contrast, there is also evidence that Radagon was always part of Marika. For example, Enya says that
the demigods are each and all the direct offspring of Queen Marika.
But how can this be if Radagon married Rennala and had those demigod children? The only way that makes sense is if Radagon was always Marika and he just went over there to seduce Rennala long ago. I'll present more
Wait, what was up with the subtitles right here?
Of Queen Marika.
But how can this be if Radagon married Rennala and had those demigod children?
What?
The only way that makes sense is if Radagon was always
I think the subtitles are fucked up.
And he just went over there to seduce Rennala long ago. I'll present more concrete theories in the future, but on this matter, the most important thing is, what do you think? While you can figure out a ton of Elden Ring's story, not all of it is open to interpretation. Certain things are, and this is one of them. And your interpretation is a big part of what makes this story special. At any rate, the union of Radagon and Marika seems to be a union of two fundamental opposing laws of the Golden Order. We mentioned these laws earlier, actually. There's the law of causality, and Marika is an agent of cause and effect. And there's the law of regression, as Radagon is a character who aspires to be complete and regress together. So
these sort of black wispy smoke things remind me of the black wispy smoke things that are floating upwards whenever you go to restore power of one of the great runes. I always thought that the things that were floating up were some sort of weird texture or material fuck up. I thought it was a bug because it just looks so odd to be there. These sort of like weird black smoke clouds going upwards. But it reminds me a lot of what Radagon's made up of.
certain things are, and this is one of them. And your interpretation is a big part of what makes this story special. At any rate, the union of Radagon and Marika seems to be a union of two fundamental opposing laws of the Golden Order. We mentioned these laws earlier, actually. There's the law of causality, and Marika is an agent of cause and effect. And there's the law of regression, as Radagon is a character who aspires to be complete and regress together. So I have a theory that forcing these two beings that represent these concepts together would have corrected Marika's deviance. But even so, she was imprisoned in the Erdtree for the crime of the Shattering.
Marika's trespass demanded a heavy sentence. But even in shackles, she remains a god and the Vision's vessel.
So the Elden Ring had been shattered, but as I mentioned earlier, there kind of had to have been a period of relative peace here before the Shattering War began. In fact, for example, the conjoined Radagon and Marika even had 2 demigod children of their own during this time, Miquella and Malenia. Because these 2 children were born of a conjoined single god,
they're all fucked up.
that messed them up, and these 2 children were born afflicted. Miquella was cursed with eternal childhood, and Malenia harbored a horrific rot within.
And Malenia, just a fucking bitch. Like, this chick sucks, dude. Like, that was her affliction. She's so fucking mean, dude. She shit's like rot all over you, and she's got a bullshit, stupid ass move. It's real cheap. It's stupid. It's a fucking idiot. I hate her.
Even so, these 2 children were both chosen as Empyreans. They were immensely sacred beings and eligible to inherit godhood from the Greater Will. Perhaps the Greater Will was just desperate to find a worthy successor, and indeed in the Shattering War to come, many would try to claim the shards of the Elden Ring, and they would try to take the throne, including, of course, the Tarnished, who returned from their long march at long last, which we'll talk about in the next main lore video. I should probably also mention here that if you become a patron, you'll see upcoming lore videos early, as that's one of the rewards you get if you pledge to the $3 tier. And if you think my channel really adds a lot of value to the Souls games for you,
I definitely need to become a patron.
Then in this new tier, you'll receive a new mug every 3 months.
Oh, I don't even drink coffee and I want a mug.
That has a unique design on it, to do with the games by From Software. There are 4 to collect. The first one you'll get is inspired by Dark Souls, then Elden Ring, then Sekiro, and finally Bloodborne. And they all have fantastic art that I worked on with an amazing artist named Chu. But anyway, I figured this is the right place to end this video, because the information here is going to be overwhelming. I bet it probably was too overwhelming, you know? It took me ages to commit these names and the relationships they had with other characters to memory, so I hope you guys are doing alright. One thing that helped me a lot was that we designed an enormous mind map with pretty much all of Elden Ring's lore, all of its item descriptions, all of its dialogues, all of the relationships between characters that we can think of. We added all of this together, and it helped a ton in learning about the story and visualizing it all. And one day I will make this asset available to you all, because I think after doing it, I think this is the quintessential way to piece together the story, and I think giving you guys this asset eventually will make that accessible for people. So I'm really excited about that. I want to thank Absa and Zard for accepting the paid task of helping me put all the raw data into this mind map so that I could better understand everything. I want to thank Paragod for fulfilling all of my footage requests and creating so many cinematic scenes for this video and for you all to enjoy. And I last of all want to thank John Devlin for the incredible thumbnail. And of course, thank you for watching. There are some really exciting things ahead, and I actually believe this might be the best story that From Software have ever put together. I just think not only are there so many amazing item descriptions, but so many of them are impactful. There are so many moments where you piece together the story and have like a eureka moment, and I'm enjoying it so much. But now I'm gonna go and play the game a little bit, because I've been editing this video for too long. So, see you next time.
And we'll talk about that later. Fucking bravo. Good lord. That, like, I can't even fathom this work. It's absurd.
Enormous mind map.
It's absolutely absurd. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, what do I clean off my desk first? And I have a breakdown. I just cry on the floor. I need to clean the fucking closet, but I also gotta drop off this thing at FedEx, and I just cry. How do you put this shit together? Good lord. This is unbelievable. We don't know. I don't really know much about Mikola either, Melissa. This is the first one that she put out.
It's me again. Thank you everyone for giving me such great feedback from my first lore video on YouTube. I'm just so excited to do more. I can't wait. So let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about Malenia, Mikola, and Morg. Oh my god, all the M's. So if you don't want to know anything about the boss fight and the lore, please click off now. So firstly, Malenia is actually called the Blade of Mikola in her first phase. You can see that's her subtitle. So we're going to get into exactly who Mikola is in this video. We can get a really good look at who Malenia is underneath all of her armor. You can see exactly what her prosthetics are, and you can actually see the extent of the rot that's taken over her body. So according to her remembrance, since the moment she was born, she suffered afflictions from birth. She harbored rot within. Over time, the rot has claimed her right arm, one whole leg, half of another, both her eyes, both her feet, and more than likely, the damage has spread all the way inside her. This game is so good at going, oh wow, you're proud of being this boss? Well, they weren't even at their full potential, so don't get cocky. These prosthetics aren't considered an ailment or a disability for her, they're actually considered a strength. They are a symbol of her victories. Now here is where it gets good, the second phase. This scene is just, oh my god. When she rises from this flower that we've seen before in the cinematic with Radahn and herself. I just want to make note of the exact pose she is striking. She's clutching her prosthesis, she's holding herself inwards, hiding her body. This pose really reminds me of this particular piece of artwork, The Birth of Venus. The same stance, the same sort of modest appearance. The birth of this goddess, Venus, who inspires love, beauty, prosperity. And this strikes an exact opposite with Malenia. Death, decay, and suffering.
Death, decay, and just like super shitty. Like just an absolute stone cold bitch. You know what I mean? Like this lady sucks, bro. That fucking lady sucks, dude. She stinks.
She even says,
You will witness true horror. Now, rot.
and you see these butterflies come off, they're surrounding her. Butterflies are often synonymous with rebirth and transformation. This is Malenia's true form, and you can see her title changes in the second phase to Malenia, Goddess of Rot. A little bit of explanation as to what this flower is. It's called a Scarlet Aeonia. If you trade her remembrance, you can unlock this ability. Each time the scarlet flower blooms, Malenia's rot advances. It has bloomed twice already. With the third bloom, she'll become a true goddess. So this flower has bloomed once, it's bloomed twice with Radahn, and we are witness to the third and final time. When Malenia falls, when we defeat her, we hear her say,
Oh, dearest Mikola, my brother, I'm sorry. I finally met my match.
This is quite a bittersweet ending for she who knew no defeat, as she was very proud of saying. But why exactly does she apologise? So the area that the boss fight takes place in actually has significance. Malenia was waiting here for Mikola. According to her helm, it says, Malenia awaited Mikola at the foot of the husk. My brother will keep his promise. He possesses the wisdom, the allure of a god. He's the most fearsome Empyrean of all. We have no idea how long she's been waiting here, but you can see at the beginning of the cutscene, she's even put a chair there, she's taken off all of her armor, and she's holding out onto the tree, and she's waiting, waiting for Mikola to come. But where is he? Going back to the second phase cutscene, our character looks up at the tree and gazes into the roots, and what do we see in there? That looks like a face, with this long flowing hair. That is Mikola. Both of these children were cursed, one of them with the rot inside of them, and the other with eternal childhood. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know if I could survive in the world of Elden Ring, let alone if I was a poor defenseless little child. However, Mikola wanted to break this curse. He wanted to save himself and his sister. So, in order to do this, they made the Halberd tree. This tree had this energy, like the Erd tree, to utilize in order to break the...
That takes some moxie, you know? That takes some will and some fucking dedication to just like, I'm gonna make a tree to fix, you know what I mean? Like, Like for me, it's like I'll talk to a therapist and I'll get medicine for my anxiety. You know what I mean? Like that's the sort of lengths that I'm going to.
In the world of Elden Ring, let alone if I was a poor defenseless little child. However, Miquella wanted to break this curse. He wanted to save himself and his sister. So in order to do this, they made the Halberd tree.
Just like, yeah, I'm gonna just make the. I want to break this curse. Hey, sister, let's break this curse. I'm gonna make this. Let's make this fucking
tree.
tree.
Had this energy, like the Erd tree, to utilize in order to break this curse. So Miquella was put inside of the tree to rest and grow there until he became free of his curse, and then by extension, he would be able to heal his sister. According to this armor, this tree was watered with Miquella's own blood, but the Halberd tree ultimately failed to grow into an Erd tree. Something went terribly wrong. Miquella was stolen from the tree by his own half-brother, Morg. Now, I don't think Malenia knew that he'd been taken from the tree. She was clearly waiting here, waiting for a sign that her brother had come back.
You piece of garbage, Mo.
That's why she says, I'm sorry, when she dies. She couldn't wait for him any longer. What comes next with Morg is a little bit disturbing, a little bit weird. This is what Miquella looks like now. I believe this is what was surrounding him while he was inside of the tree. Now, this doesn't look like the arm of someone who's been cursed to be a child forever. So it's quite possible that Miquella was in the process of becoming an adult, freeing himself from the curse, which would explain why this arm, scale-wise, is quite large. The arm moves down, and we see this blood start to run down from it. But I don't think it's Miquella who's moving the arm. And then we see Morg rise up from the pool of blood. Morg quite aptly is named the Blood Lord. He's able to control blood. He has this power of wielding this cursed blood. But why did he take Miquella? As Malenia said, Miquella is an Empyrean. He has the potential to be the new god for the coming age. He has the potential to be the next ruler. Morg knew this, but he didn't want Miquella to share this alone. He wanted a part of it. If you read the Remembrance, it says he wished to raise Miquella to full godhood. Morg wished to become his consort, taking the role of monarch. But no matter how much of his bloody bedchamber he tried to share, he received no response from the young Empyrean. So if you don't know, consort can mean partner, spouse, lover. This has definitely got George R. R. Martin's name written all over it.
Yeah, Morg wanted to fuck his brother. Much like we want to consensually make love to Ranni.
To this full god status, Morg would be his advisor, he would be his consort, his partner, and then he can establish this dynasty that he keeps speaking of. But he also just seems completely obsessed, infatuated with Miquella. And there might be an explanation for this, aside from the more creepy one. According to this consumable, the Bewitching Branch, the Empyrean Miquella is loved by many people.
We all do, right? All of us want to.
He has learned very well how to compel such affection. So somehow Miquella also has this ability to charm others, because that's what the consumable does. It's able to charm. It's a pretty useful ability to have.
Ranni is a doll, you sicko. Look, you strap a fleshlight to anything.
In the body of a child. What we're not clear on is whether Morg's experiment actually worked. As Morg's able to manipulate blood, as I theorized earlier, it's possible that he is the one moving the arm. When we walk up to this cocoon when we've defeated Morg, we can't interact with it. It doesn't seem to respond to anything, and we certainly can't attack it, which leaves a lot of open questions
here. Some good lore right here, everybody.
Is Miquella dead? Is he simply just
everybody
asleep?
In chat, chill the fuck out. There's some really good lore right here.
Moving the arm. When we walk up to this cocoon when we've defeated Morg, we can't interact with it. It doesn't seem to respond to anything, and we certainly can't attack it, which leaves a lot of open questions here. Is Miquella dead? Is he simply just asleep? Is this room for some DLC? Either way, I don't really think there's an end to this story. I think there are a lot more questions that I couldn't find answers to. It helps us see Malenia in a different light. She was a devoted sister, at least to her brother Miquella, not her half-brother Radahn, because clearly they were fighting. I was trying to understand a little bit more as to what caused their war in the first place, but based on what I'd found here, there didn't seem to be any reason. It's possible that Malenia knew that Miquella had been taken from the tree, but yet she still waited there at the foot of it, in the hopes that maybe he would come back for her. He has been stated as being the strongest Empyrean, and yet we haven't really seen him in action. We've barely even seen his character model. I think there's more to his story, and I'm really looking forward to seeing.
We're definitely gonna fight Miquella, right? We're definitely going to fight Mikkel in DLC. There's like no way we're not going to. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Make sure you follow all the links in the description and even the pinned comment. I'll put that as well. Follow Miss Chalice. Follow Vati. Follow the third person that the video we watched. I don't remember their name, but the link will be there. All right. Maybe I'll edit over my voice. And also follow The Limit. And then I'll do like an ADR voice replacement. Bye, YouTube. Thanks for watching.